with my review of the new Rolling Stones album Foreign Tongues. I also reviewed the last one, Hackney Diamonds, when it came out. So at first I thought, out of a sense of duty, YouTuber duty, I thought, okay, I have to review this also now.
Here we go again.
I was more than prepared to slam this album because after Hackney Diamonds, which was okay, but then, this album was from the same sessions, and I thought, okay, if these are the leftovers from those sessions of an okay album, what can we expect? I thought not much, but I think I was wrong. I haven't yet watched or read any other reviews, so these are my first unspoiled impressions, so don't know what others think about this album. I think it's an excellent album, and when Hackney Diamonds came out, I said that I think it's probably one of the better albums post Tattoo You, which I still think, but that doesn't mean much because I think most of the albums the Stones did after Tattoo You are kind of weak albums, and some are really shockingly terrible, I would say. Undercover Tonight and Dirty Work come to mind. Those aren't really albums I think are any good. I kind of like Voodoo Lounge from I think 1993, and I thought Hackney Diamonds to be about as good as that. But the new one I much prefer to Voodoo Lounge, and therefore also to Hackney Diamonds. Let's start the review of the individual songs. It starts off with Rough and Twisted and In the Stars. Those are the first two tracks, and those were also the singles that were released before the album release. And I was already kind of surprised how fresh and vital and good these songs sounded. Much, that there aren't any songs on Hackney Diamonds I think that are as good as those two songs, but still I thought those must be the two best songs on the album. I can't see them topping those songs. I think they're still among the better songs on this album, but I don't think they're the best songs. I think the best hit song, so to speak, is Never Gonna Lose You, featuring guest vocals of Robert Smith by The Cure. Who would have thought that combination? That's like a parallel universe, kind of, in a way, but it's great, and also Robert's great with his guest vocals on this song. Jealous Lover sounds a bit like early Prince, Prince around the time of his Dirty Mind album, which is interesting because famously Prince was support of the Stones during, the Dirty Mind era, and was booed off stage by the Stones fans. So it's, again, like a full circle thing in a way. In general, I think that the lyrics are stronger on this album than on Hackney Diamond. It's not just those tired rock cliches of Hackney Diamond, songs like Angry, really, really not very original songs. Jagger also sings about political subjects on this album, like on the track Mr. Charm, where he name drops Elon Musk, and it's kind of refreshing that he sings also on more unexpected subjects. I'm No Good is a very good Amy Winehouse cover, great inspired choice for a cover. Some of Us is to me a touching song, because it's like it's Mick and Keith duetting at the end of the song. And I would not have, after Hackney Diamonds, which was this very overproduced, polished, clean sounding album, slick sounding, I wasn't, and going through the motions and all those cliches, I wasn't really prepared to be moved by this album, but this track did it. Side Effects is another great track. The solo reminds me a bit of Mick Taylor, but it was played by Ronnie Wood. I like I said, I like about that album that it seems less produced or overproduced by Andrew Watt, who these days seems to produce every album by, older rock stars. Let's wait for his Bob Dylan album. It would be the next on his list probably. But this album sounds a bit more like the Stones are actually in charge, and you know the last album was really like, I think, felt like Andrew Watt telling them, "Hey, I want a song that sounds more like Brown Sugar," and then they wrote "Angry" and so on. This really seems more like out of their heads, so to speak, but with this time great help by Andrew Watt. You know, I think he gets better and better, because also the McCartney album, Boys of Dungeon Lane, that he produced, it's really, you know, great production in a way. It's a modern production, but you know, this is 2026. I think it would be far worse if those legacy artists would make albums with production methods from 1970 or 1980 or 1965 or something. That would, to me, you know, be like a cop out, like it's like the no real artists any longer. So I think it's perfectly fine that they have a contemporary sound. Yeah, I prefer this album to almost everything the Stones did after Tattoo You. I think to everything. I think I like it most. I like it more than any album after Tattoo You. I think Tattoo You is the last true masterpiece. This album isn't really a masterpiece, but it's very good and unexpectedly good. I slightly prefer the Boys of Dungeon Lane, the Andrew Watt McCartney album that came out 2 or 3 months ago, because I think the McCartney album is still a bit more creative, also a bit more personal, and therefore soulful than the Stones. You know, the Stones are a rock and roll band. It's not really, you know, their thing to do the most kind of personal, emotionally touching music. So that's an advantage that McCartney had, you know, going into the sessions. He's also on the album again, like on the last Stones album. He again plays bass on a track. The track is called "Covered in You," and it's probably the worst track on the album in my opinion. Yeah, but all in all, you know, I'm really surprised how good it is. And you know, let's compare this album with their career nadir in the mid '80s with Undercover Tonight and Dirty Work. You know, compared to that, this sounds really like a re-energized, vital, and inspired band. And yeah, great album. Not a masterpiece, but very good album. Thank you for watching. Until next time, goodbye.